There was just so much.
You're listening to a Mamamia podcast.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on.
Hi Outlouders, it's Claire Stevens here. It's been a little while since I've been in your ears, and I've been busy making a new season of my award-winning podcast, But Are You Happy? This season, we had some incredibly vulnerable chats with some of the biggest names in Australia, like Josh Thomas, Khan Ong, and Laura Byrne, just to name a few. And I thought I'd share with you part one of my conversation with actor, musician, and mental health advocate Rob Mills. Enjoy, and if you want more But Are You Happy, there's a link in the show notes. The presenting partner of But Are You Happy is Audible. Download the Audible app and start listening today.
I think this is just across the board for everyone, and it's definitely for me. When you do the thing and when you get the thing, you're going to be instantly happy. You're not. Happiness is like sadness. It's a fleeting thing that comes and goes.
Hello and welcome to But Are You Happy? The podcast that asks the questions you've always wanted to know from the people who appear to have it all. Rob Mills is actually my boyfriend. No, he's not. But when I was 13, I truly believed he was my boyfriend. Millsy was on Australian Idol, and he was a bad boy, which meant he sometimes wore eyeliner. The country fell in love with him, and then he came out the other side, realising he had been told who he was by audiences without ever having the chance to work it out for himself. You had that fame, you had kind of that external success. Were you happier than you had been previously?
No, it was way worse.
Now, he's one of the biggest musical theatre stars in the country. I chat to Rob about the experience of working out what it is you really, truly want to do, achieving it, and then having the media bring the focus back to a fleeting moment from the past.
I remember there's an article, I did an interview about me finishing the show and was heading over to New York to go and do auditions, and the person that interviewed me hadn't even seen the show.
Wow.
I'd done it for 2 years, and the title was something about Paris Hilton.
We also talk about his relationship with alcohol, the mental health crisis facing men, and the magic of falling in love. Here's my chat with Rob Mills. Rob Mills, you're an actor, a singer, a host, an author. You've been a household name for over 20 years, since your time on Australian Idol in 2003. I was prime Australian Idol audience. I was absolutely obsessed. I had your poster on my wall.
How old were you then?
Oh, I would have been 13. Okay. So you really,
Good.
you knew your demo.
Georgie was 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
I've told Georgie, I'm like, you're dating my boyfriend.
She did tell me that this morning.
Yeah.
I was going to bring it up. Okay, it's fine. But here we
It's
are.
between me and Georgie.
There's space between us here.
Yes.
Contractual space.
Since then, you've had a solo music career, as well as primetime TV hosting gigs and a role on Neighbours, and have gone on to become one of the biggest names in Australian musical theatre. You released a book in 2022, and you're currently playing Shakespeare in the Australian production of Anne Juliet, which I saw a few weeks ago. That's the big picture stuff. But bringing you back to the present moment, how are you right now?
Right now? I'm pretty good. I'm having a sweet treat
Yes.
with some lovely humans here in the office. I was up and about, caught up with a friend this morning, spoke to Georgie last night when I got home, and I was like, that was really good. Little FaceTime. We're living in separate cities at the moment. She's in Melbourne, I'm in Sydney. If you asked me this a week ago, mate, I was low as. I've had this cold and sickness. I was off work. I was having a really, really tough time. If I'm being brutally honest, I had suicidal thoughts for the very first time in like 17 years.
Wow.
On stage during a show.
Oh my gosh.
When I say suicidal thoughts, I will also clarify this as a fleeting thought, which was clearly irrational in the moment. There would have been a lack of food in my stomach because of the show schedule, but also just I was exhausted. I was so tired. I miss Georgie. I miss life. Like I work every single night. I give my heart and soul to this production, which I love so much. But at this moment of like, I just can't do this. And I was like, why is my body failing me? Why am I sore every day? Anyway, it was just this really crazy moment last week, mate. And I got on the scooter on the way home. I'm calling Georgie. I'm like, oh, this is very hard. I was a mess. I'm an absolute mess. Anyway, the following day I was like, probably just needed a really big cry. And I'm a big crier. Like, it's releasing the pressure valve in your life. And you're like, cool, feel better. But at the moment this week, fantastic. And as I said, it's just obviously a build-up over time. But yeah, it was a really scary moment though, having not had any of those kind of thoughts for many, many, many years. And yeah, now feeling like, oh, great, okay, was exhausted. Sickness does that, makes you feel very irrational. Lack of sleep makes you feel those things. You know this as a young mum.
Yes, and I've always thought that. I notice every time I get sick, like flu-y or anything like that, I think I have depression.
Yeah.
And I think it is actually like inflammation of the brain and that kind of thing. And you have to remember that it passes. But in the moment, it is so distressing.
Yeah.
In a moment like that where you're on stage, do you feel almost trapped by the stakes of what you're doing? Like you can't stop?
Yeah, I mean, there's the moment on stage like, oh, at least I know I have the show. Like, all right, I can just sit in this character for a bit longer. Except the character gets yelled at by his wife at the very end.
And you're probably like, don't yell at me, I'm sensitive.
Which has made it worse. But also, like, I was like, as I said, rational Rob was like, you're doing the bit. You're doing the character. And then I sing Can't Stop the Feeling and I'm like, I got this feeling. And inside me, I'm like, I've got this feeling. So
it's
fun.
Not a good feeling.
Yeah, it's so funny, so strange. But there's also the security of the character, I suppose, every night going out there. But doing the same thing over and over again can sometimes feel a bit like Groundhog Day. But like, luckily for me in this show, it is full of joy and wonder and love and hope and positivity and progressiveness. It ticks all these boxes. You said about feeling depression. There's a word that gets thrown around quite a lot. Like there are different levels of this. There is nuance to any kind of sadness or your ups and your downs. And I think sometimes people forget that it's okay to just be sad just for a moment.
Yeah.
I think it was that movie Inside Out.
Yeah.
That really cemented that for me. I was like, oh, sadness just plays a really important role in your life. You have to have sadness or else you can't have joy.
Yeah.
And they have to be best friends. Well, they don't have to be best friends, but you know what I mean? Like, it's okay to sit in the sadness for a bit. If it goes on for a long time, it's definitely worth seeking help and talking to friends and counselors or psychologists, rabbi, whoever you've got. But to diagnose yourself with depression, I think is problematic. And I think a lot of people go, oh, I'm depressed. Like, go for a run. If you feel better after the run, you're probably just a bit sad.
And to acknowledge that it is just a state that you move through.
Yeah,
Instead
absolutely.
of, I think the thing is when you feel really low, you tell yourself it's forever and you cannot imagine your mood ever changing.
Yeah.
But the nature of being human is that we move through all these different emotions in a day and they can be quite extreme.
Yeah, and for the people who are, struggling with that, definitely, yes, seek help. Like put your hand up and say, I'm actually not doing so well at the moment. And then you might get some clarity from that. You're like, oh, I was just in a moment and now I'm okay. As I said, my thing the other night on stage was just a moment. As I said, I'm pretty self-aware. Like I've done a lot of work with psychologists over the years. I've got a great psychotherapist now. In that moment, I was like, yep, I was just having a moment. And knowing that I had that moment and just knowing that I needed to talk to my person and talk it through was, quite confronting, but also therapeutic for both of us as well.
You were the heartthrob of Australian Idol.
Oh, thank you.
Were you 21 when you were on that show?
Yeah, I just turned 21. I was 20 in my first audition. I turned 21 before I went to Sydney. You go to Sydney?
I remember it so vividly. What did the public not see about that experience? Like, I can't imagine what the actual day-to-day reality was of being on that show.
We were really busy. Like, there was so much publicity and stuff that we had to do, little stories every day. Like, the producers were pulling us left, right and centre to go and do stuff. And the singing was really the small part of it. We sang for a minute and a half. And I found that really strange as a kid who'd spent the last 3 years singing in pubs, singing 30, 40 songs a night, 3 or 4 nights a week. I only have to sing for a minute and a half? Sure, let's get all the beers. Like,
it's so weird that it was only a minute and a half, yet to audiences, it felt like that was your whole week. It's really strange looking back on it that it was such a fleeting moment, and it would have been so easy to stuff up that minute and a half.
Yeah, I remember thinking, like, afterwards, like, people talk about your 15 minutes of fame. I calculated, I was like, it literally was 15 minutes of singing time on stage.
Wow.
Which is wild to me. What they didn't see, probably a precocious super inquisitive young kid. I think they sort of painted me a little bit as the boy next door, maybe a party boy kind of guy, which I kind of was as well. I'd spent the last 3 years singing in pubs. I didn't really have weekends. My weekends were working. So it's the first time I'd ever been on a plane before. First time I'd met all these new people, and I'm super extroverted. So if there's people around, my energy is up. So I spent so much time in the van with the director and learning from the camera guys, talking to the producers about what they were doing. I was super, inquisitive about how they're creating the show. And as soon as I heard Guy Sebastian sing, I was like, what am I doing here? It's like, what? I'm not going to win. So I just remember going, I'm here for the ride.
What was it like to go on a show and develop this profile and then have people tell you who you are before you know who you are?
Yeah, I don't think it's healthy. Every time I've gone and talked to kids at schools, like at performing arts schools, whatever, I teach workshops, and I get asked, would you recommend my daughter? Or would you recommend me going on the show? I was like, do you have a good sense of self? They're like, I don't know what that is. I was like, well, then no, already. So if you have self-confidence, great. But I always talk about self-worth, which is just knowing what your value is or your integrity or your reputation, and growing your self-worth will lead to your self-confidence. So, read more books or listen to music and understand why you like these songs or understand why they resonate with you, which is really difficult to know all that stuff as a teenager. I don't think your brain is quite developed yet. So, my advice is always try and work out who you are as a person, which evidently will change over time as well. But when you're younger, it's much harder to get a sort of sense of self.
Is it something that you have, even going into something like Australian Idol and the years before that when you're performing, do you experience any jealousy or competitiveness or comparison in the context of performing?
No. Okay, how's this? This is weird. Not in the real world. But when I see it online, like if I'm on my phone, then I feel a pang of jealousy or FOMO or whatever.
Wow.
So it's really strange. If I see it just in the world, if I see a performer perform, this is amazing, you're incredible, I never go, I want to do that. I'm like, you are doing that, so that's okay. You are performing, so that's fine. But there's something about seeing it online. I have a weird reaction to it every now and again.
I kind of get that. If I'm seeing somebody in person and they're at their best, I have a weird sense of that's you do you, I do me. Whereas when I see something online, there's something about the flattened sense of reality where you're not really seeing the difference between who they are and who you are.
Yeah.
You're just making kind of a snap comparison.
Yeah.
I totally get that.
That's weird, right?
That's when I find myself feeling shit.
Yeah,
That's
weird.
when I see it online.
I hadn't thought of that before. Yeah, you asked me that question. But I think that's a strange phenomenon. Hence why I've maybe deleted Instagram the last week and I'm having the best week.
Such a good idea.
I just don't care. It's not like I don't care, but I've got a great job. The marketing team is doing a great job in the Anne Juliet stuff. People know that I'm doing the show at the moment. And my life is literally get up, do some exercise and go to the show. A lot of people want to know how my day is. A lot of people don't want to know about my day.
Because you grew up without social media. You were just ahead of me.
42. You just say I'm 42.
Yeah. And because I'm very grateful that I grew up without it. Have you kind of seen how that, especially in your industry, how that plays with how you feel about yourself and feel about what you do?
Yeah, it's a really weird one because most artists, entertainers or creative people have a sort of creative flair, but we also have this weird imposter syndrome that comes with it. It's like the double-edged sword maybe. And I struggle with it at times to I love being part of the team. I grew up playing team sports like baseball and cricket and footy and Aussie rules, I should point out. And I love being part of the team. And a musical does that for me. Sometimes I'm the back pocket player, small bit part. Sometimes I'm the full forward. And being part of the team, so I can't do my job without the lighting person. I can't do my job without sound person. We're all cogs in the machine. And I like being part of that. Social media, what it does is it's all you. It's just you. Everyone is becoming their own brand and they see that that's the only way to success these days. Not so much this is the way to be famous, but this is the way to success. This is how you make your money. This is how you get free things. This is how you exist in the world. But is it? Because we still exist in the world. How does that skill set make them a better person or connect better with people? And I see it across the board. So many are doing that, are connecting with people and they're becoming a community of people. But I fear sometimes, with social media, it just makes you more narcissistic and it makes you more individualized when really we know scientifically it's been proven that if you want to live a longer, happier life, community.
Yeah.
Real community, real physical contact, real humans in the room together. All this working from home stuff is just blows my mind. But like we need people.
Yeah.
Even introverts. I just
Yes. And I'm an introvert, but I think that idea of there's a selflessness that comes into play when you are a cog in a machine. I've noticed it in the workplace a little bit. It reminds me a lot of team sports. And I always say, I reckon you can tell people who played team sports when they were growing up, because when you're in a team and you might say to somebody, hey, can you fill in on that shift? Like, because so-and-so's sick. And there are two types of people. There's the person who says, oh, yeah, I'm part of the team and I see what the team is working towards and that helps.
Yes.
And then there's the person who's like, but that's inconvenient for me. Why would I do that? and it's so interesting. And I can see in musical theatre, you have to be that first type of person. You have to be, because you're working for such a long period of time together. No one wants to work with that person who's just in it for themselves, which is interesting because at the same time, you're a performer and you're getting applauded at the end of the night, and it's...
I should point out, it's the only job in the world where you finish your shift and someone goes...
Someone applauds you.
It's the weirdest.
I'm so jealous.
Like, I just clocked off. It was really good.
And you have an entire room of people.
I had this thing many years ago, and I still think it's a good idea where you go out and give standing ovations to people when they finish their job. They're walking out the office and people just stand up from chairs and go, very good.
Honestly, well done. Well done. I deserve it at the end of a day of parenting.
Yeah.
If my daughter could just give me a round of applause before she goes to bed, that would be lovely.
Yeah. I think just put it on the screen or like have a flash mob of people that just come with chairs. They just get up and
everyone deserves it.
I think so, yeah.
After the break, Rob tells us what happened after Idol, when he performed at a concert I was, incidentally, at, and how getting the thing is not a recipe for happiness. We also chat about his frustration with the media's focus on his fling with a Hollywood celebrity. Everyone has something that helps them relax and go to their happy place. And for me, it's reading. But sometimes there isn't time to actually sit down and soak up a book. And for many of us, we need both hands free a lot of the time. Which is why listening to audiobooks is such a relaxing but also efficient use of my time. With Audible, you can immerse yourself in a range of different worlds and topics while you're exercising, driving, or running errands. It's multitasking at its finest. You can dive into inspirational listens like Ash Barty's memoir, My Dreamtime, narrated by Miranda Tapsell. Or figure out how to finally find balance in life with Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. Download the Audible app and start listening today. Membership fees apply. See audible.com.au for details. You've gone from Australian Idol, you become a household name, you have a solo music career. Australia is obsessed with you.
Well, I wouldn't say obsessed. The album the album only went gold. Oh, not even gold. But anyway.
There were a whole lot of people obsessed with you. How do you not turn into a complete narcissist? How does that not I can tell you right now, I've got two older brothers and older cousins, and we're a pretty tight-knit family. Like I would say my cousins are like brothers and sisters to me as well. So my oldest brother, Chris, he's very good at keeping me grounded. He never let me get too big for my boots and just kept it real. I would say sometimes to the point of like, you can actually just give me some compliments. Like just some compliments would be nice. No, but that was really helpful. There was a weird period though where, dare I say, my fame was lots, during Idol. And I don't think he knew how to deal with that. You have a dynamic with your sister or sibling or whatever, right? One of you is more alpha. You just sort of have the dynamic, right? And it was weird because I became the more popular person and I was like, oh, I don't sit well in this. I'm a beta kind of person, right? Like, I don't know, my personality, so I will fit whatever needs to be fit. Kind of like Georgie, we're the pretzel, right? Yeah.
If you need a leader, I'll be your leader. But I'm a reluctant leader. But I'm much happier being the wallflower, jokey person, right? Than the leader type. Anyway, so that shifted for a while where I was sort of I don't know, knowing more about the world, but not knowing more about the world than my brother. And then it shifted back. We started having kids, and then I was like, oh, great. You can now be the guy.
You can be the grown-up.
You can be the grown-up. And now we've got to an equilibrium of equalness, which is great. We talk money, we talk kids, we talk all the adult stuff, which is really, really helpful. But yeah, there was a weird period there, which had to be acknowledged, years later with therapy. I was like, oh, cool. That was what was weird. And we didn't really talk about it until years later and go on our brother walks and, oh yeah, that was a weird time.
When you do have this really public success, I always think this, really public success, I can imagine you go to like family gatherings and everyone's like, I saw you on the television and you're getting a whole lot of attention.
Yeah.
Do you think it makes people around you feel like shit? Do you think it made your brother feel like shit?
Possibly. No, he's pretty good at keeping his stride. I think he was okay with it. I think it was kind of like he would always say, you're my younger brother.
Yeah.
I'm not Mills's brother. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're Chris's brother, which was always good at keeping it real. We talked about this in the past and I think he's always been okay with it. I think he's pretty proud. But yeah, the family gatherings are weird because also people ask you questions and you forget you also have to ask questions.
Yep.
And I think I went through a period of that where I just talked about myself. And this is probably through my 20s, early 30s, and then started getting therapy. I was like, oh, you're not a good person. Not a good person, but, if you want more from people, you need to do the work. It's weird because you're constantly on all the time when you're doing a gig or post the show or and then you're like, I've got no energy. I don't have any more to ask of anyone else.
It's weird with fame because people have kind of a shortcut.
Yeah.
It's like a shortcut to intimacy. So people know a sort of surface level things about you. So it's like a fast track to ask you certain questions. And I notice it even with industry things that it's really easy to go up to someone and say, I heard you on a podcast and connect with them. And then you think, hold on, the person next to you is just as interesting as you.
Correct.
And
they're plus one.
Yeah, exactly.
To all the plus ones out there, I bloody love you.
Yes. And
you're doing a lot of heavy lifting.
Yes.
For the friendship.
And you think it's a bit dicky to kind of only talk to this person who you have this surface level of things that you know.
Yeah.
Did you find after Idol, you had that fame, you had that external success, were you happier than you had been previously?
No, it was way worse. Like, as I said, if you don't have a good sense of self, and everyone has this sort of an idea of who you are and you're just floundering but you're like, yeah, you're this party guy. I'm like, I'm really not. And then you drink a lot and then alcohol is a depressant and then you're like, okay, this is also not good either. I don't want to be this party boy. This is a very sad place to be. Also, no one knows who I am. I don't know who I am. Who am I? That was when I had a pretty horrific moment of that was the very first time I thought about maybe just end it, Robert. Just end it. And in a hotel room in the Gold Coast at Indie weekend after I got kicked off the show. It was just terrifying. I remember calling my brother and just needing to hear a familiar voice and really not knowing what I just felt. But it was definitely that balcony door was open. And I ran to it. I was like, quickly slammed it shut. And I was like, oh, this is a real panic attack. This is real. Didn't tell my brother what had happened. I just needed to hear his voice. And he's like, yeah, I'm just at Indie, having a good time. It's going great. Never again will I ever lie to myself or especially to my loved ones. Hence why I called Georgie straight away the other day. So was I happier? No. Lots of things were happening. We did a tour of the country and all the big arenas.
I went.
It was an amazing concert, right?
It was so much fun.
Wasn't it great? It was all these kids just.
It was so great.
Yeah, we sold out Rod Laver, not as many times as Pink, but I think we did 2 sold out shows at Rod Laver.
Yeah.
We all got paid $2,000 a night. Amazing.
You would have been like, I'm rolling in it.
Oh my God. How much money did they make?
I know. Off your back.
Oh my God.
It's hilarious. Have there been times where there's been negative attention on you and you've felt it in your day-to-day life?
Yeah, I still feel like a ick when someone mentions Paris Hilton, especially if I'm with Georgie or I'm just out. I'm like, oh, this is over 20 years ago for someone I was with for a day.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about someone that you were with in high school 20 years ago? What is this for? Even if it's a congratulatory thing, I find that toxic.
Yep.
I find it's great.
And quite sexist.
Yeah.
Dehumanizing to her. Yeah.
And me. And to Georgie, who's right here.
Yep.
Or yeah, that just always makes me go, yuck. And I think for a while I was like, who am I with that? And I was like, I want to be someone. I want to be someone who has a good work ethic. I want to be someone who performs, who entertains, who makes people laugh, who makes people feel good. That doesn't make me feel good. Like, I'm working towards making people feel good. Why are you making me feel yuck? Yeah, that's the only time. As I said, that happens very rare. It's usually like in pubs around blokes. Blokes, please read my book. And realise that this behaviour is not great.
We often ask on this podcast about a time the world told you you'd be happy and you weren't. When you kind of hear that, are there any moments that come to mind?
I think this is just across the board for everyone, and it's definitely for me. When you do the thing and when you get the thing, you're going to be instantly happy. You're not. Happiness is like sadness. It's a fleeting thing that comes and goes. I was so happy when I got Wicked because it completely changed my life. But at the end of it, I remember there's an article, I did an interview about me finishing the show and I was heading over to New York to go and do auditions, and the person that interviewed me hadn't even seen the show.
Wow.
I'd done it for 2 years and the title was something about Paris Hilton. Rob might be catching up with, like, no, Rob's not catching up with her. He's not even seeing. He's going to New York. And I remember, like, I was meant to be so happy because I was finishing the show, like, and then I was so sad. I cried the whole day. It was my last day at work. I was like, what is happening? Yeah, but going back to the other thing, like, you will always think that you are going to be happier when you get the thing, but you're not. And that's okay. You are. You should also, actually, Georgie's been very good about this. Because I have always lived in a gig economy. So you do the gig and then you're looking for the next gig, always. She's like, you got to stop and celebrate the wins.
So when you do, like right now, you're in Anne Juliet, there's something fascinating about being on stage, the adrenaline rush you get, the being the centre of attention. And then right now, for example, are you living on your own while Georgie's in Melbourne?
Yeah.
Is there a bit of a come down?
Yeah, I'm pretty lonely at the moment.
Yeah.
FaceTiming Georgie quite a lot and then catching up with mates, but it has to be early morning because a lot of them go to work. You can go catch up with someone on the weekend, but then you've got 2 shows on the Saturday and then so you need to, like, as I said, I'm extroverted, so I do need outside energy from people, like an energy vampire. I'm not like that. But then you need to conserve your own energy for the show because you need that for the show. So you need to make sure you're not talking too much because you need your voice to sing. It's a balance. I think this will be my last one for a while just because of life circumstances, and I don't think I could do the distance again. It's too hard. But yeah, I've been in Singapore, Perth, and now Sydney. So for the better part of a year, we've lived apart.
Is it tricky wanting 2 things at once? Because from the outside...
There's always a cost. Yeah.
It feels like you and Georgie are obviously 2 people who... Georgie, for anyone listening, is a host on The Project and is an established journalist in her own right, and both of you are very career-focused and your careers are in 2 different places. I can't imagine what that's like to navigate every decision knowing that there's a very real cost. And I guess you're pursuing something that makes you happy, but there's a big component of it that challenges your happiness.
And every psychologist will tell you this, it's compromise. It's the common promise that you make with your partner. What is the common promise? What are the non-negotiables? What are the negotiables? And do we need to schedule in time for us? What does that look like? Is it on a Monday morning? Is it after the show on a Thursday night? You know, what does that look like? How much contact hours can we have? Do we need in order for us to maintain a healthy, lovey, sexy relationship? You know, like we're still young enough to, you know, like how do we do that bit of it as well? Georgie said, do not talk about our sex life. So I'll leave it there. I think I shared way too much on the last podcast. So anyway, it's difficult, but yeah, it's writing your lists and scheduling your schedules, which is hard because we both have schedules done for us, and then it's like, all right, what are our schedules? And that's sometimes tough because also she needs downtime and I need energy. So
she's trying to relax and you're like, hey, hi.
Yeah. And then we talked about this with my psych the other day, and I think this is really important for people who are doing long distance relationships or even just couples who can't spend as much time as possible with each other. When you come together, there's this immense pressure to make it a thing, that it has to be a date night, that it has to be perfect, that it has to end in this most wild and passionate sex that we haven't had in ages. When really, you shouldn't put the pressure on it, because what if it's just you just need to hang out and watch TV and eat pizza, and that's enough. I was in Melbourne the other day, and I reckon I fell asleep within half an hour of being on the couch. Like, it was the best sleep I've had in months. So maybe that's all you need.
When did you know that Georgie was different / that Georgie was the one?
I think it was like after a couple of dates, I was like, oh, she doesn't like the thing that we're in. Like, it doesn't not like it. It just is. It's not I'm not striving for more fame or celebrity or for more things. This is just part of my life, part of my job. And I loved that. I was like, you don't meet many people now that everyone's like, how many followers, how many likes did you get, the world's obsessed with social media and your presence. And I'm like, can't it just be a job? And then can't we just do other stuff that's not online and stuff? And I don't think we even talked about it. I think it's just the way she presented her world and her life and talked about her friends. And I was like, oh, you're like me. You're just like a little nerd.
Yeah.
Like, who's just doing a good job and just wants the world to be a good place. And like, you like good art and good movies and films. And I was like, and you think deeply about things and you write it down and we talk about it like, oh. And she sent me some books. She gave me some books to read while I was overseas. We started dating. I think within a couple of months I was on an overseas trip with a mate, which I was really planning on, having a good time overseas. And I was like, God damn, I've had a really good one here. Like, what is happening? She gave me On the Jellicoe Road.
Oh, yeah.
And The Perks of Being a Wallflower. And I read them on the trip. I was like, these are very good books. Like, what's the one that quote from Perks of Being a Wallflower?
We get the love we think we deserve.
That's it.
Yeah. Oh.
And I was like,
profound.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yep.
Because if you think that you're not great and you don't deserve love, you're never going to get it, or you're going to get a yuck kind of love. And I was like, oh, that's you.
Oh.
I'll get it.
Oh, stop it.
No, don't make me do it. Don't make me do it. But yeah, I think that was it. I was like, oh.
Damn it.
You're a
I
good
found
person.
her.
Yeah.
I found her.
I'm crying.
Yes.
You got me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to part 1 of my interview with Rob Mills. In part 2 of this episode, Rob Mills talks about his relationship with TV presenter Georgie Tunney and gives us a sneak peek into their wedding planning. He also shares his thoughts on why it's so important for men to open up about their mental health and reflects on his journey with his sexuality after years of media speculation. If you want to listen to that or any of the other incredible interviews we had this season, there's a link in the show notes.